Good morning. Since we were actually in recess, we're coming back to order. I'm going to go through an agenda, but since Carol's worked so hard to get us an agenda, we'll go through that. So, Mr. Mayo, if you'll do the invocation.
Yep. Let's pray. Father God, we're thankful that we're able to come here this morning. We thank you for giving us safety as most of us left town or were with our families over the Memorial holiday. But Father, we want to pause and just give thanks to the fallen heroes of our country, and especially the ones here in Wayne County. Father, we're grateful for all the things that took place during Memorial Day to honor and tribute the fallen of our country. Dear God, we thank you for your blessings upon this county, and that you might bless us as we make the decisions in moving forward with a budget for next year. These things I ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go in our budget work session, you did have a couple. You want to go ahead and let Earl come up first? Or he'll do that.
Y'all had asked to have our new DSS director, Earl Moffitt, come in and go over his request, particularly I think on the personnel. So with that, Earl, if you come on with it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are asking for some new positions. Primarily, they're in child welfare. We did a study, and we averaged 7 vacancies in child welfare at any given time over the past 3 years. These are usually in investigation positions, and they result in people having caseloads of 20-plus investigations at any given time. That results in children being at risk. What we're proposing is 7 more positions there to cover the 7 vacancies that we have at any given time. Obviously, those positions, those 7 will probably stay open, but this will allow us to be fully staffed in child welfare investigations. We're also asking to get 2 new program manager positions and move an existing resignation into that for 3 program manager positions in services. Currently, our program administrator supervises 10 supervisors. In child welfare and adult services, all you can do is put out fires. You can't plan anything, you can't coordinate anything, you can't reach out to the community because of something going on all the time at any given time. We put the financial cost of those in your packet. This screen back here. We're also asking for 2 more program integrity positions to investigate fraud. We've been cited over 50% of our fraud cases are not investigated timely, and we've been cited by the state. So we're asking for 2 more fraud positions in there. The first area on this is the cost of the program managers, changing 1 position we already have in 2. That would be, the county funds for that would be $104,571. The social worker INT or investigator positions would be a county cost of $85,652, and that could even be less depending on how they code their time. And then the program integrity investigator positions would be $47,835. You used to have 3 investigators at one time, and I don't know what happened, but 2 of them were done away with, and you only have 1.
question.
Yes, sir.
If I understand correctly, Earl, these social workers, these new positions, that we want to put it in the budget, but we won't necessarily use that money, is that correct?
That's correct, because if you average, for the last 3 years, you've averaged 7 vacancies at any given time. This will allow you to stay fully staffed at the current level, but you still have to budget it if you have the position.
Earl, let me ask you this. It sounds like what you're asking for is more allocated positions, but they're not actually going to be used. It's so that you can keep people.
If we keep that, so we can stay fully staffed. I mean, it might go over 1 or under 1, but
Well, can we address that by just authorizing you to go after 7 more positions and have kind of a waiting list type thing?
Well, we'd have to have the positions to advertise for them through OSP, I think, the local government commission. You probably know better about that than I do.
You're saying that state personnel would require that?
Well, I would think so.
Well, we could look at it that way. We'll take a look at it.
Being a former state employee, I remember seeing some state positions listed if sufficient funding is available. So you can allocate the position, but you don't have, I don't think you have to put the funding there, because I remember seeing that over the years.
Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is we do something similar to this with EMS, right?
We do.
You want to explain that?
I will. We do it very similar with the Office of Emergency Services, particularly with EMS and Wayne Net and 911. And I think I explained that to Commissioner Aycock the other day. We take applications for them all year round. Most of our positions, we simply take applications when we have an opening, but because they are critical positions. And in Mr. Merritt's case, of course, Child Protective Services is a very critical position. We take applications so that when we do have an opening, we are not, I'm not going to say wasting time, but we're not waiting to advertise for the position, wait for the applications to come in, wait for the screening process to be completed, and then hire somebody, because in the meantime, we have lost critical services as far as EMS is concerned, as far as Wayne Net is concerned, and as far as Child Protective Services would be concerned. That way, we have already vetted these applications as they come in. So when an opening comes available, we know who we can go ahead and pull to fill that position. And therefore, we get it filled much more quickly. So we always have a pool of applicants. But the thing is, you have to have that open slot, and he was explaining, in order to retain that pool of applications.
And the difference is that our people, those are our personnel policies. DSS is under the state personnel, and that may, so what he's saying may be right. If that's the case,
It could be.
I think what we do is we allocate the positions, whether or not you put the money in there or not, it's something we can talk about. But as long as he has the positions allocated, and he can prove that to the state, then I think we're okay with it. But basically what I'm hearing is, you're not gonna spend, he's not asking for 7 more positions where you're actually gonna spend the money, correct, Earl?
Right.
Okay.
So am I understanding you to say that we could basically advertise the positions, state the positions are there?
Yeah.
And if there was an occasion where maybe there was one over, you'd already filled the 7, and you're in the other 7, and then you need that particular one, we could do a budget amendment on that particular one,
I
would
don't
we
even
not?
think you'd have to do that because of lapsed salary.
Yeah.
Of lapsed salary.
I think we could cover.
Okay, so you can
one
cover
or
that.
2 with lapsed salary, don't
Right.
you, Ms. Hill? I don't.
So just authorize the positions,
So
but
basically,
don't.
that's
put the
what
fund.
you're doing is so what we would do is amend the sheet in the budget that talks about allocated personnel, take that up by 7.
Can we get somebody to check with the state personnel office so that we can know whether or not we have to fund that? Can we do that this morning?
Vicky, Ms. Hill probably knows.
You want to talk to Brenda? Let's get
Well, regardless of whether you, we can check that later, but regardless of whether you have to put it in or not, you're not gonna spend it.
Okay.
That's what he's saying, and I think that was the $64,000 question were we looking at 7 more salaries that we actually had to pay, and the answer is no.
Well, if you allocate the dollars, my concern is if you allocate the dollars in the budget, it's there and you can fill those positions. That's my concern.
Well, that's true. But is that something that you feel like you can work with, Earl?
Yes, sir, we want to, it'll take us to next, if we advertise today, it will take us into July, I'm sure, to find the people. One more thing about these positions too, that makes it very critical. Before a child welfare worker can go out, they have to go through what's called pre-service training. These are at various sites across North Carolina. It takes 3 to 4 months or more sometimes to get them through the pre-service training if we cannot hire them with that. Sometimes when you get people coming from other counties, you get other counties' problems, and you have to be real careful with that. And I prefer to grow our own. We've already done, we had a job fair this weekend. We didn't get too many people to come, but we're looking, we contacted all the schools of social work and tried to encourage their recent graduates, especially from this area, to apply. So, but that is another part of the problem, that even if you don't have the vacancy, you may have somebody there that can't go out. So even if you're 7 down already and you got 3 people that have come in that don't have pre-service, then you're down 3 more. So it wouldn't hurt you if you had the opportunity to overfill sometime anyway, but I feel pretty comfortable. Most of the funding for these positions is federal money, and so it's 20% or less of county funds in these positions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so what you're saying is they've got to have this 3 or 4 months training. Are they required to get that training before we can hire them, or do you hire them and then train
We
them?
have to hire them and train them.
Okay.
If we can hire them with the training, then of course, if we do that, everything.
Well,
has to be-
but there again, you just hit on it. You might be getting somebody else's problems if they're, if they're already trained and they left somewhere. Part of that percentage is going to be pretty high. That there was a reason for them leaving.
Yes, sir, and that's why I like to get Wayne County people, or people from this area. They're more likely to come and stay. Although this is a high-stress position, you usually get young people come in, they start their families, they have to work it in the evenings, even though you got on-call workers. It's so much stress on them, and then they get to a certain stage of their employment and they either look for something else within the agency or they leave it entirely. So you're always going to have turnover.
Question, Mr. Chair. I was asking Mr. Wood, do you still authorize all advertisements of positions?
Basically, I've delegated that to Geraldine. So unless we have a freeze on something, she goes ahead. But, I would suggest we do something like we do with EMS, to where we kind of get a pool of applicants. And I was just looking at this, if you go to the green sheet, I think, and Earl just alluded to it, but I want to make sure everybody understood what he was saying is, these 7 jobs are 80-20 jobs. The state pays 80, we pay 20.
Not
So-
the state, the federal
I
government.
mean,
The state
federal
doesn't pay
government. So
anything.
bottom line is, the county, it cost us 20%. So if you went 2 over for the whole year, you're only talking about $24,500. And that would be if you average that. So, if that's what he needs to help get this back up to full employment, which is what he's trying to get to, I'm fine with that. Because I don't think we're gonna spend the full $85,652 in that column.
I don't think you can hire them fast enough.
I don't either.
I don't think we can hire them as fast as they leave you, just about.
Yeah.
And then with the training component we just talked about. So I'm in favor of giving him the 7 allocated positions. And then we'll find out about whether we actually have to budget for it or not, or we can just say, here's the amount of money. If he gets them in, we'll come up with it, if he goes over the 7. frankly, where we're sitting now, that would be a happy problem to have.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
I applaud the idea of what Mr. Merritt is wanting to do. I like the idea of growing our own because we have such a high turnover rate, and if we can grow our own through the job fairs, like he was talking about this weekend, I think our child services might have less turnover because we have homegrown, and I think what he's actually talking about, if you will, a semi-apprenticeship program, if you want to label it that, because we want to concentrate on hiring people in our own county. So from that standpoint, I applaud the idea, and I really like what you're doing moving forward.
One other strategy that I've used in the past is to have paid internships from the schools of social work, maybe $10 an hour or something like that, and get them to come and do their child welfare internship here. Number one, you get the pre-service training taken care of. Number two, you know the person, you know if you'd like to have them as a permanent employee later on, and you build your pool of prospective employees in that area, and it works really well.
Ms. Hill, would you have an answer for us?
Yes, sir. We have to establish the individual positions, so funds would have to be allocated to each position. But if we have the lapsed salaries in the budget, we would be able to pull those once we, just pull the funds into that job description.
Allison, we could just reduce the amount of lapsed salaries we were going to put under central services, right, and move that money over here, and the net effect would be zero on the budget.
We could, now, we've already used for 7.
Oh, I know, but see, this won't be actually used.
Right.
It's just, she's just plugging the numbers so that
Right.
we can plow to the state is what it amounts to. So if we did it that way, it wouldn't impact your budget at all. That's what I'd suggest we do.
Good.
Okay.
That's on 7 and not the other 4.
Yeah, the other four are real money.
Yeah.
But if I'm understanding this, or what you're looking at is basically a reorganization, you want a supervisor all over these areas.
I want a program manager over adult services and 2 different program managers over providing up the children's services programs.
Because I believe you said you had one guy overseeing some
10 supervisors.
10 supervisors.
And then all of the various investigations, in-home services, foster care, adoptions, on-call, intake.
You can't, you just can't.
I don't know how he's done it.
I don't either. He's awesome. He really is, but he's not that awesome.
He's not that awesome.
I don't know too many.
Nobody
people
is.
that are.
And the program integrity people, that's the fraud investigation.
I always thought that when I was on the board over there that those positions should have been filled. And it never happened.
We've been cited by the state.
Yeah, I remember that.
And probably consistently. But if we're going to investigate fraud on a timely basis, we've got to have enough people to do it, and we don't, I think.
Mr. Parker, you going to write a motion, or what we're going to do here? I was going to make a motion.
Or just add this to the budget.
And might I say that the board reviewed this pretty thoroughly at their last meeting and made the recommendation that we do these things.
So
Social Services Board.
So we're gonna take the 7, we're gonna move over from laptop and cover
I would-
the social workers, right?
Yeah, Ray, I would take the 85,652 from lapsed salaries.
Yeah.
And Allison knows what the line item is on that. And then the other positions, we would just simply add to the budget.
Okay, I make that motion.
Earl, how about, help me understand now, why would you want 7 additional new positions? For those 7, why not 2 or 3?
because we did a study over the last 3 years on our average vacancies in child welfare, and it was 7. We had averaged 7 at any given time. So if we budget those 7 positions, or we have those 7 positions, and we aggressively recruit, we're still gonna have 7 vacancies at any given time, but this should put us at full staffing as we are currently budgeted.
And how many positions is that?
7.
But is it just 7 for that particular program, or is it more?
For children's service, all children's services. It averages 7 at any given time. When I went there, I think the board was making it pretty clear that they were concerned about the number of vacancies that there were in the agency, and this is a strategy to try to do away with that problem.
How many positions on social worker one do you have available now that are in the field?
I think if you look on the third sheet of the long sheets he gave you, that might address Joe's question there. That shows you how many you have in each one of those areas, Joe, and then adding one of these people down at the bottom.
It shows the vacancies that under the services program.
There is 7.
So if I'm understanding your theory here is if you've averaged 7 vacancies over the last few years, you're just assuming that you're going to continue to have 7 vacancies.
Because of the issues that I said. Number one, just the nature of the people that come, the employees that come in, single, without a family, primarily female, get married, have children, and are not willing to take that much time away from their home later on.
So I guess my original question was, how many positions are here?
Well, I hadn't counted them, but there are 10 units, adult services and children's services too, but we're focusing on children's services pretty much here. Don't have the same kind of turnover in adult services.
15, 20.
That's about
I have
about 65 or 70 positions in those units.
And yes, we have 7 at any average time, you got 7 vacancies. Okay, understand.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think as I listened to this, was there some rationale that the department had not filled these over time, and it sounds like 7 has been a number that has come along through time? I mean, is that months or years, or what's the history?
3 years, Mr. Camardi, is the average that he conducted in his study, but as you can remember when you were on the board, we ran anywhere from 15 to 20 vacancies,
Okay.
predominantly in that area. But what he's proposing is essentially to create a pool, just like Ms. Jolene said they did for emergency services, whereas they can advertise and collect a pool. The only way we can collect those applications is to establish a position for state personnel purposes. So while we might not feel it, this would allow us to recruit ongoing and have a pool of applicants ready every time.
So that 7 is gonna cut into that 22 or so that we had heard about?
Right. And what she's saying is, which makes sense, is the difference between that and EMS and these others is the state is bringing 80% of the money to the table, so you have to tell them, you've allocated this many positions, you actually request them, and they have to approve it.
Yeah.
So that's why he's saying you got to put it in the budget.
All right.
But again, if you take it out of lapsed salaries, we have a contra account where we do an estimation of how much lapsed salaries we can bring forward. We can just take that amount up by a corresponding amount on this 85,000. And so that part will not impact your budget.
Mr. Wood, that would be like what would go into the fund balance at the end of the year, but you would
Right.
just take what would go into the
I'm
fund
gonna
balance
put it
at
into
the
your, I'm gonna put it in your account, but we're gonna adjust the we're gonna adjust the lapse salaries to reflect it. So the net impact on the budget will be zero. But you'll have what the state requires. It will be in your budget.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, am I correct that the average caseload in child services is 10? Is that correct?
It's supposed to be 10, but with these vacancies, it gets up to 20 and 20 and more than 20, and you cannot do investigations and protect children that way. It's
Well,
impossible.
my further point is that, am I correct that some of the vacancies that have been created has been because the existing workers have a larger caseload, they get frustrated and they decide to possibly go somewhere else?
That certainly is a factor, because if you've got more work than you can do, and I tell them it's a calling, it's not a job, and you go home and you're worried about some child that you didn't get to that day or something like that, many times the workers will be worried about one they just did investigated and ride by the house at 2 or 3 houses on the way home, just to see if the perpetrator, the person's been accused of the abuse's cars in the driveway or something like that. It's something that is really stressful for people in this area. And if they got more than they can do and they're having to do other people's work because the positions are vacant, then it really amps up the stress and makes it more and more difficult to do.
Mr. Pate,
Yes, sir.
we've tiptoed around this. I certainly don't have a problem with what he's wanting to do. I think Mr. Wood doesn't have a problem with it. But one of the main things that's not been addressed, we had a heck of a morale problem at DSS. Let's certainly hope that this is going to cure part of his problems. I mean, I'll be the bad guy today. I mean, let's just tell it like it is. I mean, we had a morale problem there. I understand that it's better, and I cannot visualize that better morale is going to help his situation as far as vacancies. Thank you.
Sure.
Before you, I'm just going to make a statement because I spent so much time over there myself. The things that the board is taking over there, going to Northwoods and then to the management study, certainly I think addresses what you're saying, and I'm hoping, and I have believed, because I certainly voted for that step when I was over there, that's going to reduce your turnover rate. So I'm just hoping that happens. Of course, we'll be watching closely.
The Northwoods program, we sent some people out last week to visit a county that loves it, and they came back with all kind of great ideas. Ms. Hill can probably tell you better if she went too. We're probably going to take another trip, and then we're calling Northwoods in, and we're going to address what issues that we have and get them resolved. Paid a lot of money for that. It's working very well in some places, so we need to find out why it's not working very well.
Well, it's supposed to have a maintenance and effort on that too, to continue to come back and keep you updated. Is that correct, as I recall?
Yeah, I believe we do.
We have a contract with them, but what we, Mr. Merritt spoke with our county rep, and he told him how dissatisfied we were. And what he and Mr. Potter have worked out with Northwoods at this point is one of their project managers that was on the initial team is going to come back in and provide us with 2 weeks of on-site additional training, retraining, and address any problem areas we've got at no additional cost to us. So it would be covered under our maintenance contract, and this is kind of a freebie that they normally wouldn't do, but they know how upset we have been and just not satisfied.
I think that's what I wanted to hear, Mr. Mayo.
Yes, you're fine. You're fine. I wanted to address, I think we're at a point, because I spent a lot of time with Earl the last 3 weeks a month. I think we're at a point that we can pretty well set aside the morale problems in DSS. It's changed 100%. I've been up there and I've seen supervisors come down to Mr. Earl's office and say, after the first week, said, that this is the best week we've had in 8 years. So I think we're at a point that we need to move above the morale issue and start working on what Earl was working on, the issues that are causing high turnover rate, which is in child services. And we're not any different than any other county, by the way.
That's right.
It's just the fact that Earl has a way that we can address that. So everything that I've heard from supervisors, program managers has been nothing but positive. And I see Vicki shaking her head, yeah. Well, we agree. So I applaud what you're doing. I really like where we're headed at DSS. We've got a lot of work to do, but we're heading in the right direction.
Let me say again, too, you've got great people working here.
We knew that the whole time.
I know.
Yeah.
I've been in 4 different counties now, and you got great people working here. Great work ethic, very creative, doing a great job. We're a couple of little things we're doing to try to help communications. We're sending all the minutes of the Social Services Board out to all employees. We're having staff meeting of everybody there, and we're having supervisors meetings of all supervisors every couple of weeks. We're doing minutes for all those things, and we're sending them out by email to all the employees. We don't have secrets. If it's being considered, we put it out there so people aren't surprised. But there's great people there. It is not anything I've done. They're just really good people.
We appreciate you coming over. I think you've answered our questions, I believe. And I'm assuming everybody's okay with that being a recommendation to the budget from Mr. Wood.
Yeah.
I think he's got a motion.
Yeah.
Oh, we need a motion.
I made the motion unless you want to go.
15 minutes ago.
I forgot all about it, I'm sorry. You say it again, please.
Well, I'm gonna go through, and Mr. Parker, you correct me if I make a motion that we allocate the 7 social worker positions. That's what we're talking about doing, allocating. And then fund the income maintenance administrator positions, and that county is $104,571. Is that correct?
But those are social work program manager positions.
Yeah. And then we're going to drop down to program integrity investigator, and we're adding 2 at the amount to the county of $47,835. And I make that in the form of a motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Is there any additional discussion?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
I would like to amend that motion, and let's give the county manager an opportunity to work out the details and then bring it back to us so we can understand it better, because right now, I don't have a clue as to what's going on.
Well, we have an amendment on the floor that the county manager will bring it back to us. Any discussion on that?
Yes. I'd like to ask Mr. Wood, is there anything else you need to research?
I think, no, I think the part about how we would fund those 7 positions maybe is what's causing the confusion. What we do in the budget is we have a contra account, which means it's a negative number, and it's an estimation of how much we'll underspend salaries. Does everybody follow that? In other words, we budget all of our positions as if they're going to be fully filled all year. Well, that never happens. And so you're going to save some money during the year from what we call lapsed salaries, which is just where you have vacancies from turnover. So rather than go in and try to estimate what that'll be by department, we typically just put in a contra account that says we think we'll have lapsed salaries of X. We're always extremely conservative on that, because to the extent that we don't budget for that, that money, as it's saved, just falls to the bottom line, and we put it helps us underspend the budget. Is everybody following that? So what we're doing here is we're saying that for this amount of money that Earl is requesting, which is the $85,652, we will actually take the DSS budget up by $85,652, but offsetting that is we will have a contract, that contra account will be taken up by that amount. So what we're really saying is this will be paid by lapsed salaries, because the theory is he's never or rarely going to fill those 7 additional positions. And the net effect on your budget will be 0. But what we're also saying is during the year, if he should go over, if he should fill the 7 and fill 2 more, let's say he's got 9 temporarily, he's okay to do that. But he can either find the money in his regular budget during the year, or we'll come back and use some of this money. So my gut feel is we'll end up revenue neutral for the year.
We will be very fortunate to immediately solve that 7 position.
That's right.
But we have to start at some point.
And so the first couple of months, you aren't even going to be spending the first 7, much less the second 7. Does that make sense? So I don't think it'll have any impact on your budget. And frankly, I like the plan he's got. I didn't realize that the state would require us to budget for it. But I understand that if they're going to put 80% in, they're going to want to agree to that on the front end. So we'll go ahead and put it in the budget. But again, by doing the contra account, the net effect on your budget will be 0.
So to paraphrase what you're saying is basically you're going to incorporate what he's recommending into the budget.
Yes, and the only other thing is your raised motion then says the other 4, we will fully fund and we will spend that money. I want to be very clear about that. The 2 fraud investigators and the 2 supervisors, we would be spending that money. So in essence, the net effect on your budget is adding 4 positions.
Yeah, about 150.
Yeah, the 150-something thousand. That's with benefits.
Yeah, with benefit.
I have to agree with Commissioner Bell. I would like to see something in writing, because in the original budget that you gave us, you only had X number of new positions.
Right.
Paramedics and the health department, et
That's
cetera.
right.
So it might not be no bad idea to paraphrase or write out the analogy of it, stick with the social service budget, and then update that cover page you have new employees.
Yeah, we can do that. Now, remember, this is the proposed budget. What you come up with is something different, but I'll certainly, so we wouldn't change the write-up in here, but we will change, when you vote on it, that will change the allocation of those positions. And, but anyway, we can write something up for you.
I guess my question to you would be, you want that before we vote on this, or are y'all comfortable with him saying if it's going to be 0 on the budget, have a write-up on it, that'll be included with the budget? You okay with that? Would you withdraw your amendment then?
I withdraw my amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Page, I withdraw my amendment.
All right, thanks for clarifying that, Mr. Woods. Okay, we got the original motions on the floor. We're not going to restate it again because it's a long one. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think we got Brian and Annette.
Yeah, I think some of you had some questions about EMS, so we asked them to come. So Brian and Manette, if y'all come up.
Where is he?
I think what we were doing there is adding 6 employees to the EMS stations, but that's because we're adding 1 station. So, and as y'all know, our people work a 24 on, 48 hour off. And so it takes 6 people to put a 2-man crew around the clock. So that's why the 6 new positions. But in addition to that, Nanette is requesting an administrative assistant, and I think there may have been some questions on that, so I wanted to go over that with you. Let me look at this real quick. Yeah, 1 administrative assistant for Wayne Net. This has to do with us taking over all of those clients from when Johnson Ambulance Service went bankrupt. We have pretty much doubled our call volume, is that
Yes, sir.
right? And so there is an awful lot of paperwork involved. Oh, I'm looking under the budget message, and it's it's about 5 or 6 pages in. It's item number 8. Everybody see that? Okay. If you look at 8 and then item I under that, 1 administrative assistant for Wayne Nett. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to y'all, because I think you need to give them a detailed explanation of how much paperwork is involved in scheduling those and filing for the payment with EBS and all that. Okay.
Good morning. I have asked for an administrative assistant. At the time, I have a Wayne Nett planner. What I'd like to do is take that position and divide it into 2. We've gone from 25 calls a day to over 50 transports a day. The weekends have gone from 15 on Saturday to over 30 on Saturday, and anywhere between 10 and 15 on Sunday. So we really increased our call volume. From July of 16 to April, we've gone from 700 calls a month to almost 1,200, sometimes more than that in a month. At this time, Medicare started back in 2016 a program for repetitive transports. Now, what a repetitive patient is somebody who goes to a doctor or a dialysis, some kind of a treatment place 3 times a week, or 1 or more times in a 10-day period. So with that being said, if they're Medicare patients, every 60 days we have to file with Medicare. When I say we, not our billing company, Wayne Nett has to file with Medicare prior authorization for us to get paid. Well, in that process, you have to call the treating physician. If they're at a facility, you have to get medical records from their facility. You have to get records from their family physician if they are not the treating physician. All that has to be filed online with Medicare. And in those records, it has to state why these people need to go by stretcher. If I get little envelopes like this from Medicare, they're telling me they're not going to pay. So then we have to start the process over, call the physician's office, dialysis doctor, and start all over again. At this time, I am the only one that does that. Before September the 1st, when Jazz employees did not have a job and those patients didn't have a way to go anywhere, we had maybe, at the most, 3 a month. At this point, we're right at 30 people a month that we have to do these records for. So what I'm asking for is a second person, take this net planner position, let one person do nothing but phone and appointments and the scheduling, and then let this administrative assistant help me out in the paperwork, the filing, and everything like that. We've doubled in transports. You've graciously given me vehicles. You've graciously given me more employees to run these transports, but I need some help. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm drowning, trying to do a lot of other stuff. So that's why I'm requesting some help.
Reasonable request. The continuity of operations is important and vital. You're talking about 2 admin people basically to provide continuity operations, and
I think it's certainly a reasonable request.
You want to say something, Mr. Acuff?
Yeah. The Wayne net side, we were in the black, not in the red, right? Or close?
Don't even pause on that. Don't even pause
I will
on that
say,
question.
I will say that I think it was in the February, March, we were less than $1 million in collections. And I did request, Friday from our billing company. And according to our billing company, since July the 1st, Wayne Net has collected $1,545,000. So we've almost doubled
Well,
recently.
let me address that. That's one of the issues I think we've already talked with you a little bit about, but I want to go over today. If you go to, what is y'all's number? EMS?
622.
622.
Yes, sir.
If y'all would go to Fund 622.
Before we go there, can you give me a salary range on this administrative assistant?
Cannot remember what I put in
I
the,
don't have it. Do you have that, Janice?
Well, we got the position, just what was the salary?
She's looking for it.
Where did you find the 622?
Back here in the back now.
Yeah, we're down, we're back to,
It's grade 63, and starting at 1329 per hour,
1329 an hour.
yeah.
grade 63.
Okay, if you go to Fund 622, it's EMS/Wayne Net Fund. Okay, everybody got that?
No, I do not.
Where is that?
I don't see it.
Is that a general fund?
632.
22.
622, we're in numeric order here.
It's right after the blue tab of street assessment.
Right after the,
All the way back.
right after the street assessment?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay.
They got to make smaller books.
Okay, the blue tab's covering it up. That's the reason we can't find it.
Emergency Medical Services Fund? Is that what
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I got a tab miss.
Okay. We're good.
Okay, the other issue that we're having is in addition to all of this paperwork, we're having issues with our billing and collections company. I didn't bring the sheet with me, but I can show it to you. Basically, in about an 8-month period, our accounts receivable has grown by $500,000. And what that means is we're not getting the money in. And the way we treat it on the budget, going to Wayne's question, is we treat that on a cash basis. We don't treat it on what we've billed. We treat it on when we actually convert that to cash. So we are looking at that contract. I think I mentioned that at the last meeting, that we want to bid that out. It's been, I think, 15 years on that. In addition, we're aware that some other counties have gotten a lower rate. So now some of it may be attributable to Medicare and Medicaid slowing down reimbursements and questioning things like we've talked about and Nanette's talked about. But some of it, we think, is they're just not pursuing it like they ought to. And so we think we can address it by bidding it out, hopefully lower the amount of the fee they get, but also to become more aggressive and have a performance clause in there that if they don't perform well enough, you know, that we're subject to terminating the contract, because it's illogical that our trips have gone up and yet our revenue is not coming in correspondingly. So, but again, if $500,000, you got $500,000 more in receivables sitting out there in a 7 to 8 month period, what's happening is we're billing it, we're not getting the money in.
Mr. Rick?
I have a question. If you, if you prorated, you know you're gonna get that money sooner or later. If you prorated this money though, as if you were getting in, are we breaking even? Are we in a profit? What would we be if we had collected this money?
I think you'd be profitable
Okay, that's,
on the Wayne Net
at least,
side.
yeah, at least.
Now, EMS has never paid
You're
for
never
itself.
gonna be in the profit
And-
side of the
No, I'm
EMS.
talking,
But-
I'm talking
Yeah,
about Wayne.
no,
Net.
no, we should be getting more money in, and if we did, we would be profitable.
Okay, well, that's the whole key right there. If you don't have the receivables out there, you're not gonna make a profit.
That's right.
So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Bell. I just want to make a general statement. I was here on this board when we didn't have a paramedic system. I was here when we didn't have Wayne Net. And I think this county is better off today than it was when I first came on board because of what we have provided for the citizens of Wayne County. And it sounded like a pretty good deal to me, what she is requesting. Having to do all these double duties, that might be one of the reasons why we haven't collected all that money. So, I think we need to go ahead and just give her what she's asking for, really.
One of the reasons that I was in favor of picking up the additional calls volume was the fact that Wayne Net was profitable. The profitability of net is important to offset the cost of emergency transport. And I take pause to see your pause of whether or not we are in fact profitable, because we have got to be profitable on Wayne Net to offset some of those costs. Now, that said, by doubling volume, if we were making $500,000 a year at one volume and then we double it, I would hope, as a businessman, that we would be making $1 million a year to offset those increased costs. But if we're just increasing cost and not having the offsetting revenues to add to or offset the cost over on emergency transport, we've got a problem.
But let me state this. Medicare has changed rules.
But whatever the
I know,
lay of the
I know.
land is, if Medicare changes.
They've changed, and we're having to
We're not being able to bring in those dollars to offset our costs, then we need to look at a different business model, is what I'm trying to say. Just by adding ambulances and increasing the call volume, if Medicaid's not gonna reimburse us for that, and we're not making that, then let's put that over on the private industry as such, rather than on the government. So, I'm just saying, things may be changing based upon our reimbursements. And if that's the case, and we're not making money at Wayne Net, we need to look at this.
Well, let me address that. First of all, I agree with you. Secondly,
Well, let me stop right there. What'd you say?
I said I agree. I agree with you. I don't think we should lose money on it. What I'm saying is, what we'd like is give us time to work the problem. Because I really think that this $500,000, we can whittle that back down. And when we do that, there will be more profit.
So you're saying it may be billing, it may be
Yeah,
the way that we are?
That's right.
Okay.
It's a combination of things, I think. And I do think some of it is Medicare and Medicaid, and not just that they've changed the rules, but they're slower in approving reimbursement.
Well, it's just done a great job as far as incorporating all that
Right.
increased volume.
Right.
But my concern is, are we making money in doing it?
So, Mr. Daugherty, since February, we had a meeting with our billing company in February, because we knew there was an issue. So we had a sit-down meeting with them and said, look, we've got to improve, things have got to change from where the point we are right now. So we got an update, and we've been meeting with them constantly since February. Things have got to change every 2 weeks. So we've seen an increase since February, since we're constantly having these meetings. She got an update again on that on Friday, show where we are again compared to where we were in February. So I'll let them.
We also gave them a notice that we were going out for bid.
That's what I'm hearing.
So now
I think that's a big thing.
Now they've picked up to get to where we think they should be, but it's a shame that we've got to put pressure on them to get them to do what they're supposed to do.
and that's just something else that I'm doing. I'm now the middleman between the billing company and our facilities. I'm being in, you know, I'm, where I don't feel like I should have to be included because that's not part of my job, but yet Wayne Net is my passion, and I want to see it grow even more. And I'm not sure how much more we can grow, but I'm sure it's there. But before I know we can do that, I've gotten in the middle of these collections and put myself out there, and I'm with the billing company like this, and I'm going, helping them out with the facilities, trying to get. We, at one point, I think it was in March, the facilities, it was over 200,000 that we were owed, and as of Friday, we're down to 136,000. And some of that is Medicare, waiting on Medicare and things like that, or the insurance companies.
But that's some of your big facilities.
That's our big facilities, yes, sir.
Well, I
We're
agree, that's a
working- we're
reasonable
working on it.
request in regards to it.
Right, but now, we are working on it, Mr. Doctor, I promise you.
Mr. Aycock.
I'm gonna get into the weeds a little bit, but every once in a while we have to. All right, Wayne Net is a backup for EMS. All right, when a Wayne Net truck has to go out and cover a call for EMS, is that expense still coming out of Wayne Net, or is it coming out of EMS?
Wayne Net.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's.
So it's a backup.
I mean, it's, right, but, you got, things like that needs to be addressed. I mean, because, patient care is the main thing, whether it's Wayne Net or EMS. And if you take a Wayne Net truck and send it on an EMS call, we're accomplishing what we want to accomplish. But there again, in the long run, it could hurt your figures at Wayne Net. Okay,
And
I just.
and speaking on Wayne Net backing EMS up, Wayne Net consistently backs EMS up.
I know that.
And there's times that specifically, I mean, it happens more and more. Mr. Gurley knows where I'm coming from. There was times that very rarely we were down only one truck or two trucks left in the county to answer calls. That didn't happen very often. That is consistently happening almost on a daily basis, that we're only down to one truck left in the county. And that's when we depend on Wayne Net to come in with our QRVs to assist in backing us up on the calls and keeping the county up and running in emergency medical services.
And when you build that extra station and put those people out, that's gonna help with that too.
Yes, sir.
So, and you gave them an extra crew, remember, around the clock last year, but that was to deal with what Brian's talking about. One other thing I did want to mention that, this current year, you remember, we did estimations on what we thought we would take over from Johnson Ambulance Service. And I think everybody knows that some of their,
Accounting practices.
were a little questionable, and I'll leave it at that. And so we had to do an estimation of what we thought those numbers were. We thought we had discounted them enough, and apparently we didn't. So that's also part of it. But I think the main thing is this whole billing thing, and that's why, we plan on going out for bids, and I don't know if we need a motion to authorize that or not.
Go out for bid?
Yeah,
I so moved. I thought we'd already done that.
I think you
We
did.
already
don't need a motion.
Okay, you don't need a motion.
Just do it.
I just want to make sure everybody's on board that we go out and do that.
Mr. Bell, go ahead.
I'm gonna say what Ed Cromartie wants to say. I feel it. I just hope we don't get into the position where the only thing that we're looking at is the dollars and cents. And we're supposed to be providing the services to the citizens of Wayne County. And I just hope we just don't look at, boy, we got to make an X number of dollars, or else we're going to just
Right.
discontinue the business.
Well, I don't think you're going to reach that point. I think the thing will be profitable. We've just got to address this billing issue. And we'll be back where we need to be.
Did I get it, Ed?
Yeah, you got it.
Just another general statement, the EMS federal Medicaid reimbursement you get every year over the past 5-6 years has been slowly decreasing, probably to the tune of about 30% now. So that's probably somewhere around $300,000 we've lost as well.
Well, in this discussion, if I could, Mr. Chairman, why is it fair for Wayne Net, which I consider almost a private, a enterprise fund, put the right term there. I want to consider that. Why is it fair for them to pick up the cost if they're providing emergency transport? I think there ought to be a corresponding charge back to EMS if you in fact are providing the service.
Well, if you recall, 2 or 3 years ago, we combined them into one fund.
I understand that, but how are we going to know the financial impact, positive financial impact that Waynette would have if you're going to be providing emergency transport?
Well, if you gave us if you wanted to see how that worked out at the end of a year, we could go back and do an estimation of those, but I wouldn't recommend you do the
I
accounting
just
for
think
each
to
and
be
every
fair
time we
to
back them up.
Waynette, that there ought to be some report given out where some charges were actually, don't take all of her profits and give it, and
we can,
flow it
like
over
Mr. Lee
there.
said, we can do a report at the end of the year.
Well, I think we need a
And break
report. I think
that
we
down
need
and
a
say, we run 500,
Right.
Waynette run 500 calls to back up EMS.
Well, it's
so we
not,
can-
you would
Add an
agree, it's not
estimate.
fair to Waynette if
That's
we're
right.
going to hit her with a good bit of expenses
It would
by
give a clear
providing, emergency transport.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pate,
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we accept Ms. Sutton's recommendations in her request, and I put that in the form of a motion.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion?
Only that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Did you say that you, maybe I missed it, did you say that you had a position that you wanted to split, or just a new position?
She needs a full position.
It's a new position, I'm gonna split the duties.
Oh, okay, it's a split, all right.
So
I
it
think I
is,
made it
it is
clear.
one full position new.
Yes.
One full new level.
Yes.
That's all thing I had.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
Okay.
Thanks so much, and I agree with him, and a report at the end of the year that showed a clearer picture would be beneficial to.
There's one other thing, at our last meeting, we talked about debt collection. Once it went past the billing to debt collection, we wanted Nanette to maybe kind of give us an update on that.
Yeah, you want to talk about that, and then we'll talk a little bit also about the contract, because I think when we're doing the contract, we're also going to look at, what's the cutoff on, what Joe's talking about is, under this contract, how many days do they try to collect before it goes to debt collection, and then what the percentages are going to be. And so we're going to address all of that in this RFQ that we've got going, or RFP, excuse me, sorry, RFP. Yeah, okay, but go ahead, Nancy.
With our billing company, when a service is provided, the patient receives 3 bills. If they have done nothing after 3 bills, contacted the billing company or either made a payment, because sometimes even on the EMS side, if it's a motor vehicle accident, they're waiting for the insurance to pay. Because I'm not gonna pay if it's somebody else's fault. But anyway, if they've not contacted the billing company within 3 billing cycles, they're automatically sent to a debt collection agency that the billing company has contracted out. That debt collection agency goes for 12 months. If they have not collected anything in 12 months, then it's automatically sent to, the debt, set-off, debt set-off, I couldn't think.
But we do the debt set-off.
But, right, the county does the debt set-off. We prepare the letters, we print the letters, and it's over 2,000 letters or more a year. And I'm not sure the collection percentage on that, but.
Pretty high.
It is pretty, I knew it was high, but I wasn't sure how high, but.
Is everybody familiar with the debt set-off program? This is where we send it into the state, and it's an authorization for them to deduct it from any income tax refunds, and then they pay us. Of course, that assumes the person's getting a refund, number one.
Or we hit the lottery.
Yeah, it hits the lottery too.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I wanted to back up just a second. I'm sort of picking up on Commissioner Daughter here for a minute. I'd sort of like to see, right now, if you were to produce a financial statement, it would be obscure because you're not charging emergency services. Your financial statement might look a lot better than what it is. My question is that if we want to do funding in the future and the growth of Wayne Net, shouldn't we have a more of a true picture of what they're, I would not wait till the end of the year. I would request that if we could do something once a quarter to, and I'm just suggesting this, to let us be more aware, because otherwise, we're not going to get the true picture. If you've got to get an accountant today to do a financial statement, it would not be correct. So.
And I can include that in our quarterly report that we do.
Would you please do that?
I will. I will start doing that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Getting in the weeds a little bit. Let me go back to your analogy of how you bill. Okay, from what I'm understanding.
Our billing company bills.
Oh, that's right. We don't do any billing.
We don't do any
So
billing.
you've got a billing company that you
Yes, sir.
hired that we're paying 8% to, and all they do is send out 3 bills.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
And then whenever they send it to the collections.
Wait a minute, after 3 bills.
Yes, sir.
So we mail 3 bills,
It-
and if there's no response, automatically you turn it over to a collection firm. Do you know what the collection firm charge?
I do not know offhand how much that percentage
30 to
is.
40%.
And then also, on top of that, Mr. Daugherty, the billing company still gets their percentage.
Oh, well, of course. Oh, they do?
Yes, sir.
In addition
To what the collection agency.
well, if you want to split half your profits with collecting bills, that's what you're doing.
Well, you just hit on
I mean,
all the points why we want to
you
bid
just
this
can't
out.
do that. You just can't.
You did bid it out
You
last
can't-
week and just
We'd
hoping
be
that we
out-
could
I'd be
say
out
it
of
was okay,
business
did
tomorrow. So.
And we totally understand.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's why we're bidding it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we want to address all those issues in it.
You know, I asked that question the other day, it seems to me that ought to be an agency that does both, and ought to cut the percentage down tremendously, I would think.
Yeah.
I can't imagine there's not somebody here that does not do both of those.
Let me just ask the question.
All right.
Why don't we bill it? Why don't we turn around, send out 3 bills, and if you don't, wait a minute, if you don't get collection, just send it to debt set off. I think you would be way ahead of the game going that route.
Let me put something there. They don't just send out 3 bills. They do file, if they have the insurance information, they do file it with the insurance companies. Okay, let me clarify that. I'm
She'd be
sorry.
asking for
They
more
do
than
do
one
something
administrative
else.
assistant to do that.
If you wanted us to bill,
We gave you an additional assistant, okay, y'all bill.
if you wanted us to bill, I would ask for about 5 or 10 more
Thank you,
people.
Mr. Chairman. I'll vote.
I call for a vote, Mr. Chairman.
I thought we moved.
We did.
We did.
Let's move on.
Well, I was getting ready to say, we got a lot of business to take care of
Okay.
today, so thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
over, and hope you take care of that little girl, grandyoungin, I mean.
Thank you, I do.
Thank y'all.
All right, bye.
Very good job. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for all you do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do it.
Okay.
Mr. Wood, I believe we need to have a closed session, I mean, is that correct?
Yeah, if I could.
Oh, okay, we'll do that.
You know, we had talked about one other thing, which was going over this low wealth funding. I think it might be good to do that and then go into the closed session.
Okay, well,
If that's
you-
agreeable with you.
That's okay.
All
Do
right.
we need a break up here, guys?
Y'all need a break?
I'm good.
Everybody's good, let's go ahead and move forward.
All right.
And how these old men are.
Carol, can you hand these out?
Yes, sir. I'll share it if I have
And they get 30 days.
Wait a minute, you don't get your money anyway. So you make a deal with the collection agency. Exactly.
Okay, let me go over this with you real quick, and I'll kind of read through this, I guess. It's not as lengthy as it looks.
Okay.
There's a
You knew
bunch
what
of.
my sigh was about.
No, there's a bunch of attachments. It's really about 2.5 pages.
Oh.
All right. Okay, at the budget presentation last Tuesday, you asked me to research further the steps necessary to protect the county regarding the school low wealth formula situation whereby we no longer meet the statutory threshold. The state is projecting a Wayne County loss in fiscal year 18 in this funding of $979,878. We would still receive $5,261,911 in low wealth funding. If our local delegation is successful in getting the state fiscal year 2018-20 biennial budget bill adopted with language that includes our school system in an exception to the formula currently given to Onslow and Cumberland counties, then this issue will be resolved for 2 years. In other words, for the length of that biennial thing. The county would need to make sure the language remained in subsequent state budgets as well. Onslow and Cumberland County have been successful in doing just that. Our local delegation is working on that very solution. Both Dr. Dunsmore met with Representative Bell, and then we went up and met with him also the following week. He is very aware of the issue and is working very hard on it and understands it completely. The state may not adopt its budget before July 1st, as has happened several times in the recent past. This means we may not know if the state budget contains our exemption or not before we are statutorily required to have a budget in place. If our local delegation is unsuccessful in getting Wayne County exempted from the formula, how can the county best position itself to deal with this possibility? There appear to be 4 key issues. Number 1 is, can the county adopt an interim budget until the state has adopted its budget? And the answer to that is yes. Number 2, can the county delay the levying of the tax rate for the fiscal year 2018 budget until it adopts the regular budget, not the interim budget? Number 3, would it be cheaper to increase the tax rate a sufficient amount to qualify under the low wealth formula for the fiscal year 2018 budget and each fiscal year thereafter, preserving the $1.9 million? Or is it cheaper to increase the taxes sufficient to offset this amount of loss? 4, if we do have to raise the tax rate, would there be additional money and what would it be used for? So let me address those questions in order. Number 1, state law does allow a county to adopt an interim budget for a few months. There are specific provisions we would have to adhere to, but it can be done. We have a model interim budget ordinance from the State Treasurer's Office to guide us. I have enclosed 2 articles that Allison Spate researched on this matter, and I want to give her a lot of credit for that. She got them very quickly for us. The first is 2 pages from the State Treasurer's Policy Manual, and that's the next 2 pages you have. And I have underlined in yellow the pertinent sections of that. Ms. Melanzi is a professor at the UNC School of Government whose field is budgeting, and this policy manual references an article from her. So the first 2 pages are from the State Treasurer's Policy Manual. The other 2 are from the article with Ms. Melanzi. As Ms. Melanzi and the State Treasurer both make clear, you not only can delay setting the tax rate until you adopt the regular budget, you are required to. So delay levying the tax rate is allowed. So we can do an interim budget and delay setting the tax rate. Okay, that's the answer, the legal answer to both of those. If you go through this under interim budgets, the State Treasurer, if you go down here where I've highlighted, the authority to adopt an interim budget ordinance is defined in GS 159-16. The next part, taxes are not levied in an interim budget. No amounts are shown for revenues or appropriations of fund balance. That's a little bit of a kink in the interim budget. It's a little funky in that you don't show the revenues, but you show the expenditures. But you do have to identify where the revenues will come from. Because the next page, the first line, however, the unit must identify the financial resources to be used to fund the interim appropriations. So on the one hand, they say don't show the revenues. On the other hand, say, but identify. We hadn't figured that one out yet, but I'm going by the interim.
I was kind of reading that, then, once you look back, what else money you got in your pocket, you can pay for it.
And it might be,
It
might be because we're
That's the way I'm reading that.
probably going for 1 month.
Yeah.
Yeah. A key point for local officials to consider is that an interim budget ordinance is designed to provide only short-term, temporary budgetary authority to continue current operations. The statute's intent is not to include new programs or program expansions unless they are legally mandated. Salary and wage increases, extraordinary items, transfers, nor capital outlay appropriations included in the annual ordinance. So in other words, you basically take those things out. You wouldn't put those into an interim budget. A sample interim budget ordinance is found in Exhibit H. We have that. I've included it as well. Local governments may adopt an annual budget for some funds and adopt an interim budget for only the general fund if they choose to do so. The staff of the LGC does not recommend this as it results in a unit having more than one annual budget ordinance. And it also may cause confusion for some units of the government. So basically, they don't recommend it. And then they refer you to Ms. Malonzi's article. So if you go to the next two pages, which is Ms. Malonzi's article, I've underlined some things. She talks about, the first paragraph, she talks about when certain things are due on the budget, but she says, the only date with any legal consequence is July 1. That is the date by which the budget ordinance must be adopted in order to recognize revenues, levy property taxes, and authorize expenditures for the fiscal year. But then it says, what if you miss it? Some units choose to wait until the state adopts its budget or until they learn the fate of grant applications or other potential funding sources in order to better predict revenue streams for the year. Well, in our case, it's because we want to know what the state's done on their budget and have they plugged our $1.9 million hole. Okay. Next thing, under interim appropriations, some of this is a repeat of what the Treasurer's Office said. The Local Government Budget Fiscal Control Act recognizes that a unit may not meet the July 1 deadline. If a unit does not have a budget ordinance in place by July 1, the Act requires a unit's governing body to make interim appropriations that cover the time period between July 1 and the adoption of the budget ordinance. And what we're going to recommend to you is we use a 30-day interim budget. And there are a number of reasons for only going 30 days. First being we think that'll more than cover how long it'll take the state to do. Interim appropriations can only be used, and again, that's a repeat of what we just talked about, what can be in there. Interim appropriations do not technically constitute a budget because they do not include revenues. You must fund the interim appropriations with available fund balance or current revenues. Bill, which is what you were just talking about. A unit should ensure that it has the funds to cover and disperse any disbursements that will come up during the interim period. So then we talk about how long can it go. There's no statutory directive as to how long a unit may function without a budget ordinance in place. There are some practical limitations to operating under interim appropriations, however, and I'll let you read through that. So basically what you do is if you adopt the interim ordinance, budget ordinance, you post the appropriations appropriately. Then when you come back and adopt your annual ordinance, you make sure they're posted to those accounts properly. So that's basically it. Now, number 3, and the third question, let me refresh your memory. Question number 3 was, would it be cheaper to increase the tax rate a sufficient amount to qualify under the low wealth formula for the 18 budget and each fiscal year thereafter, preserving the $1.9 million in state money, or to increase the taxes sufficient to offset this amount of loss? So Mrs. Spade and I have prepared the attached spreadsheet. So if you'll go to this sheet, which is the spreadsheet, it answers the question. We started with the 4 years of information that the Department of Public Instruction had sent us on the low wealth formula calculations for fiscal year 2018. Remember that fiscal year 2018 allocations are based upon tax information from 2 years prior, in other words, 2016. Two major assumptions have to be made in trying to calculate the needed tax rate. The first is what the county's weighted sales assessment ratio will be. There was not a clear pattern from the 4 prior years, so we had to estimate. We assumed it would rise by 10/100ths of a penny every year, except for fiscal year 2020 when we go through revaluation. And why did I put 2020? Because remember, the revaluation numbers take effect in 19, but it's when you send it out. And when you send the bills out in August of 19, that's for fiscal year 2020. So the fiscal year is 2020. We assumed that a revaluation would bring the ratio to 1.000, or in other words, assessed values would equal true market value. That's what a revaluation is supposed to do. So we think this is a conservative approach. So if you look at the third line down, or fourth line down, see where it says county's weighted sales assessment ratio? Everybody on that line? I've plugged in the first 4, then I've plugged in that 17 would be the same as 16. For fiscal year 19. For fiscal year 18, that it would be, we already know it's going to be 0.40. The state gave us that. So we assume the same one in 19, and then it goes to 1.0000, and then it just gradually goes up. So that one is not that big, but what it does is it takes your effective tax rate and adjusts it slightly. Everybody follow that?
No.
All right. Look under where it says fiscal year 16 on top and fiscal year 18 on the bottom. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right. This is the one they have just sent us. Your tax rate in 16 was 66.65, and that's why that number's in there. Everybody follow that? Okay. So then you adjust it by this weighted sales assessment ratio, and that gets it to 66.8. Everybody following that? And if you do the math, that's how that calculates out. So then you compare that to the state effective average tax rate, which is 66.90, which means we missed it by 10. You know, what was that, 10? I can't even do the math on this. 10/1000ths of a penny.
Yeah.
That's how much we missed it by. Everybody seeing that?
Yeah.
And so that's why we have the problem. So that's the first estimation we had to make. Is everybody following that? Okay. When you do that, let's go to the next thing. If you look at the third paragraph in my memo, the second major assumption is even more problematic. We have to assume what the state effective average tax rate would be in each of the future years. This is derived by determining what the effective tax rate is for each county, summing them, and then dividing by 100 counties. Obviously, no one can know that. We'd have to have a crystal ball. I mean, how would we possibly know what other counties are going, which ones are going to take their tax rate up, which ones stay the same, and the rare case where they actually take it down? Because you've been in the minority. When you're taking the tax rate down, trust me, you're in the minority. Most of them are going up a little bit. So the best we can do is look at a trend. And so we tried to look for a trend. The 4 prior years do not yield much of a trend. So if you look at the spreadsheet for a minute, I've got difference in cents year over year. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. The difference in 16 was 2 cents. Then it was 1.2 cents. In 17, it's projected to be 0.5 cent in 18, which is the number they've given you. The reason those numbers are in black, those are all given numbers. That's what was on their report. Everybody good on that? Here's where the problem comes in, is how do you estimate what that'll be? What we looked at is if you take the average of those, it averages to 1.23 cents. But the trend is that this tax rate keeps going up. And that's the tax rate that you have to meet, match, in order to meet the formula. and not have to get the state law changed. Is everybody clear on that? So here's what I'm saying is, we're basically saying that we would have to put in a tax rate that makes up for where we're short, but you'd also have to do that every year thereafter. So here's what we're saying on this chart. Go to the line that's in yellow ink, estimated tax rate increase. If we assume that in fiscal year 18, we're in 18, coming up on 18 now, okay? But what we want to know is, what would we have to change the tax rate to equal this? Well, the state, the estimate for them is they're going to be at 68.9. Okay? Everybody see that? The state effective tax?
That's a guesstimate though, right?
That's a guesstimate.
Okay.
It is a guesstimate. Because what we're doing is, we took it up 1 cent each year, or right at 1 cent. It's about 0.95 each year. And so with that, you would have to raise taxes 2.55 cent in this fiscal year, in 18, to meet the formula, so that when it comes out in 19 and 20, you would meet it. Everybody clear on that?
As mud. But I understand where you're coming
Well, it's
in.
difficult.
But there are some assumptions.
There are assumptions built into it.
Mr.
So,
Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I ask, why can't we deal with it, since we don't know what the state rate's gonna be, the average? Why can't we deal with it on a yearly basis, just like we are now?
you can. I'm coming to that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, okay.
Okay. All right,
That's
so.
why I say it wasn't that easy yesterday.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you look at that state effective average tax rate, that thing's going up by about a penny every year. Is everybody seeing that? And just to give you some idea, in last week's paper, Cumberland County is looking at laying off close to 100 people and a sizable tax increase, because they've got a huge budget deficit. So that's the kind of thing that knocks this average. And I'm just using that as an example because we became aware of it. And I've got the news article if anybody wants to see that. But if you go with that assumption, then you can see that you would have to go up to 68.9, then 69.9, 70.9, 71.9, 72.9. You can't do that. There's no reason to even try to do that, because number one, every one of those 1 cent brings in $806,000, and you don't need that kind of money. Plus, remember, you only lost 2.4 million. You've lost 1.9 million, right? Worst case. So let's go back to the memo now. So we selected the 1 cent again using a conservative number. When you do that, it shows that the fiscal year 18 budget would need a 2.55 cent increase in taxes, which is a 3.8% increase, in order to match the state's estimated average tax rate. It would then require increases of close to 1 cent per year to try to maintain eligibility under the formula. This is not the solution, as it would result in higher taxes than we would lose from the formula. One thing you also need to remember, and I didn't mention it, is that next year the formula will use 66.35, not 66.5, because you took it down another 15 basis points. You remember that? And so the starting point is not 66.5, it's 66.35, because that's where your tax rate is right now. So basically, if we're at 6, you know, for us to get from 66.35 to 68.90 takes 2.55 cents. That's how we arrived at it. And then the problem is, every year thereafter, you have to keep going up. Even if these assumptions are off by a half, you still wouldn't make this. You're still chasing a rabbit that's running faster than we are. Okay?
I understood that.
Okay, so,
Chasing rabbits.
well, that's the first thing that popped in my mind. I said, we're chasing a rabbit that's outrunning us, you know. The better course of action would be to raise taxes by 2.46 cents, which is a 3.7% increase the first year, which would be this year. I'm saying if this fails, if we don't get it in the state budget, that would generate the $1,979,878 lost under the formula. There would be no need for any other tax increases, as trying to meet the formula would cost our taxpayers even more. So the better course of action is go up one time. So what we're saying is, and then you could try, the next sentence, the Board of Commissioners could try in subsequent biennial state budgets to have the exemption apply to Wayne County. So every 2 years, even if you didn't get it, you can go back and try to get it put in. Number 4, and just to refresh your memory, the fourth question is, would there be any leftover money, and if so, how should you spend it? There might be if you went ahead and did a regular budget and adopted the tax levy and then came back and found out the state took care of us. Then we'd have 1.9 million of extra money. That's not what we're proposing to do. What we're saying is we should wait, do an interim budget, wait on the state's budget, then levy our taxes. So by delaying the tax levy, we can assure that we know whether we have to fund this gap in revenue and set the rate accordingly. Consequently, this would guarantee that there is no extra revenue, as we would simply be replacing only the lost state low wealth revenue that they were withholding. So what I'm recommending to you is exactly what we had talked about, is we would do an interim budget for 30 days. By definition, an interim budget does not levy the taxes. And then we come back before the end of July and adopt the regular budget and do the tax levy. And the latest word we have from the state is they think they'll be finished with the budget shortly after the House comes up with theirs, which is supposed to be either this week or next week. So they may finish it on time. Remember, they've got the whole month to do it. And so what we're recommending is add a month of July with an interim budget, do not set the tax rate, and then let's see, best case, they take care of us. The 1.9 million is made up because we're exempted from this formula that we can never catch. And then we would, we'd be fine.
That's true. I don't have the information, but the difference between, and Commissioner Daughter brought it up, the difference between our tax rate and what the estimated low wealth was 0.01, is that right?
It's 0.001.
0.001.
Which means it's 1/100, it's 1/1,000 of a penny.
Okay, now, next question is, how much would that affect if we increase the tax rate? How much does that is equivalent in dollars?
Well, 1/10 of it would be $80,000, but that doesn't get you anywhere. See, you're not making up $80,000. The state, this is where it gets punitive. The state, on that formula sheet that I showed you before, on that formula, if you miss it at all, they go to another step and says, what should you have raised to be at the state average? Okay? Now they're not talking about the state average tax rate, Ray, they're talking about the state average for funding schools.
Okay.
And when you look at ours, they're penalizing you 28.7%. When I gave you that number that we'd still get 5.2 million, but they're cutting 1.9, that's 28.7% of the 7 million something you would normally get. So the $80,000 doesn't make up. The loss to you is 1.979 million.
It is, but can't we avoid that loss if we increase our tax rate to meet their
No,
minimum?
no, because remember, this was set, they're using your tax rate from 16.
Yeah,
So that's locked in.
right.
So you don't meet it. Right now, you don't meet
We
it.
could, though.
No, not for 2 years. If you set the tax rate in 18, remember, they're using 16 numbers for 18, they're going to use 17 numbers for 19, and your 17 number is even lower.
So if I'm understanding it and clarify, the way it is now, unless this language is not changed in the budget for 2 years,
You're going to lose.
we're going to lose approximately $4 million. Just, that's a given.
Over that 2 million.
That's a given.
That's correct.
Now,
Yeah.
if we establish a tax rate that is in line above the state average, then for the following 2 years, we'd be safe.
Yeah, but what I'm telling you is that's going to cost more than just making up the 1.9 million.
That's correct.
Because a penny on your tax rate brings in, I got a little note here
About
somewhere.
800,000?
No, it's 806,000
800,000.
at the 97.7% collection, which is what you got to go with. Okay, so roughly 806,000. So what I'm telling you is, if you go 2.46 cent, that generates the 1,979,000 you need. And don't take it up anymore. Quit trying to. You're not going to catch this formula, is what I'm trying to tell you. And the other way you qualify is if you meet the state average for what they fund students, and that's an even bigger number. I didn't even calculate that because you can't get there.
Well, we still may not meet it because we're dealing with estimates, like you said.
Well, you're right, Ray. I mean, it could be worse than what I'm telling you. It could be a little better, but it could be worse.
Well, we could
But
go
even if
down.
it's a little better, it's so bad, you still aren't gonna catch it. Is what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, I'll tell you
So
what,
my recommendation again is wait,
Yeah.
do an interim budget for 30 days. Wait till we see what the outcome is on getting this exemption. If we get the exemption, we got no problems for 2 years. But I want to stress now, you're in the same boat with Cumberland and Onslow, is every 2 years, you got to make sure that exemption stays in that new budget bill. This is not a permanent law, this is a budget bill. And it's good, we have a biennial, meaning a 2-year budget, the state does. So you're good for 2 years if you get it in there.
Stay friends with your representatives.
That's right, because you got to get it in. But the other thing that tells you is you've also got allies.
All right, Mr. Chairman, one quick question on the interim budget. You actually are going to use,
112.
but you're actually going to use revenues of our fund balance to
It
fund
says you
the.
can, it says you can count on revenues you'll get in too. For instance, we can.
Sure.
Sales tax we can count on.
Sure.
We can count on some fee income. and
But
all
you
that.
are going to use some fund balance for the 30 days. But once the budget is passed, you replenish those dollars. Is that
The way
correct?
I'm gonna write the new budget, I'm gonna add a paragraph, if Gordon's in agreement, is to put a paragraph in it that says, basically that it's expressly understood that this budget supersedes any and all interim budgets. And then you're making it clear, this is the budget, this is the appropriate.
When we pass it.
When you pass it.
Okay.
And that
So-
way, basically, the net effect of the interim budget is it just goes away.
Okay.
Mr. Bass.
It's, real quick, it's just, I was just looking at something here. I think we should learn a lesson from what we have ended up here. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Wood, but in the last year's budget, if we had a done a revenue neutral budget, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because we decreased the tax rate. We decreased the tax rate.
But not that year. This is based on the year before. This is based on when you took it from 66.65 to 66.50.
Okay, I got you.
But let me say this, I don't want you guys beating yourselves up about it. If it hadn't happened this year, it would have happened next year.
Well, it's just amazing that we go back to 2012 when we went from .7025 to .6665, and we're being penalized because we saved taxpayer money. I got a problem with that.
Well, we do too.
As a
I got
elected official.
you know, one of the crazy things about this formula is that it just looks at your relative wealth. So it looks at what your tax rate is. There's nothing that says if you generated the extra money, you have to give it to the schools.
Somebody.
So it's kind of
really
meaningless.
doing a job on this.
They need a new formula.
Mr. Aycock.
What we're looking at here, this is strictly property tax, correct? Does any,
Yes.
does sales tax play into it
No, it
any
does
work?
not. This is strictly
So
property.
my point is, if we were to raise, I don't know whether we can or not, but say you could raise a sales tax and earmark it for the schools, it would not affect what we're dealing with right here one bit, would it?
No, but it would be, let me back up a minute. It could. Let's take a worst case, Wayne. The worst case would be it doesn't get in the state's budget, and we gotta come up with 1.9 million every year, right? Certainly for those 2 years. Then the question becomes, how would you raise that money? You know, you could either raise the property tax 2.46 cent and generate it, or you could do, if you were to do a sales tax that offsets some of that, then you could do it that way. And if you did it and earmarked it for education, that's where this low wealth money was going. So to answer your question, it could cut down on the amount of the property tax increase you need. Does everybody follow that?
Well, I mean, what I'm hearing, and since this has come public,
Right.
what I'm hearing is, the people that's calling me are, they don't really have a problem with a sales tax increase,
Yeah.
but they do have a problem with a property tax increase.
Right.
And their theory is that everybody pays sales tax, and I can't argue with them. I'm just relaying what cause is coming to me.
Right.
And you know, because I don't know what the answer is, how to work this out. I mean,
Well-
but I've got to listen to the people that's calling me and relay that, and let's see if we can work it out.
Right. Well, the good news is that there are bills in the legislature right now to give more flexibility. As y'all know, there's I believe it's a 1/4 cent transit tax that some of the bigger cities use. And there's also one, I believe, for education. And what people are asking for is to take those earmarks off. Just give counties the flexibility to pass those if they want to do it, but you have to have a referendum.
That's what I was getting ready to say, you're gonna have to vote on it.
But if you do that, that may give us the flexibility to do that, because I don't ever envision us doing a transit tax. We don't need it. So if that were to switch to a 1/4% that you could do anything in the general fund with, you may want to look at that. And depending on what they do with the other ones, you may want to do that.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman. If everything stays like it is, and we don't do anything, this 1.9 million, am I assuming correctly that we would have to come up with that out of our fund balance?
No, that's why we're waiting, that's why we're doing an interim budget and waiting to set the tax levy.
Yeah.
You could do it out of your fund balance, or you could raise the property tax, or you could do a combination and look at what Wayne's talking about. Now, the timing would be a problem for this year.
Right.
And you might want to use some fund balance on that. Let's say, and I don't know what the numbers are, I'm just
Right.
picking a number. But let's say that the 1/4 cent sales tax would generate $500,000, okay? You could raise property taxes, instead of 2.46, raise it, the difference, between 1.979, basically 2,500,000, be roughly a 1/4 less, 25% less. Use some fund balance for 1 year, meanwhile go through with this referendum process on the sales tax. So that the next year, you've already set the property tax where it needs to be, the sales tax kicks in, and you don't have to use any more fund balance.
But if we don't do any of that, sales tax or property tax, it would have to come out of the fund balance. My point is this. I've been preaching for 5 years that we needed to watch the money that's in our fund balance, that something's gonna come out of the woodwork to hurt us. This could be one of them. And the bottom line is that I'm cautioning us again. Our fund balance has drastically decreased by the board's approval, over the last 5 years. Our fund balance.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah, because we have purchased, like the jail fences, and paid cash for it. I'm talking about unencumbered.
Well, I am too.
Unencumbered.
I think what you're losing sight of is we've also underspent our budgets. So while we were spending some down, we were also replenishing it. But to answer your question, we have Allison has done that, and we'll go over that with you shortly.
One final point, sir. Actually, we don't have to fund it at all. You didn't read that option. We don't have to actually make up the $1.9 million. We're not mandated to do that, are we?
No.
No.
No, but it's Board of Education.
Well, I agree, that would be but we're not mandated to do that.
You're not mandated to do it, but you remember where your funding level is.
I understand all that.
Okay.
We're morally obligated.
Well, I'm just saying, we're not mandated to.
You're not legally mandated.
Okay.
But morally bankrupt.
But we're
Morally bankrupt.
Well, the other thing I would remind you of too is the Board of Education has some options on that.
Us for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, they know they have that option. Okay. Mr. Chairman, that's what I think we're ready to go into closed session. Well,
Okay.
first of all, does anybody have any questions on this?
I'm not gonna ask them.
You don't even started looking at the funds yet.
Okay.
Because that's what reason, Mr. Parker?
Discuss matters relating to the location of industry in Wayne County and consult with me to preserve attorney-client privilege.
There's a motion on the floor to go to closed session. So moved. Got a motion on the floor? All those in favor stand in. Councilor Rivers, we were making a discussion about trustees on borrowing monies. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Right. You had previously approved the Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company as your trustee. They have told the county that we have got to do things that the county does not believe is in the best interest of the county and would cause substantial problems in the finance office. And so we're asking you to do away with them as trustee and to appoint U.S. Bank National Association as trustee. They were the second bank money-wise when they put it out, and it would cost an additional, for them to be the trustee, an additional $50 a year over a 20-year period, and it would cost probably you a new employee in the finance office if you had to do what the first bank said.
Is there a motion on the floor based on his recommendation?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion on the floor, any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And I think we're recessed now for lunch, and we'll be back shortly.